$1,000. Then no. Last year, the average vet bill went up 7.5%, and 4.7% fewer animals walked in. More money, fewer patients, 4 years running. That gap isn't greed, it's a contract. Signed years ago in a back room. Real numbers. This is marked up. You own it. 1 veterinarian, 6 staff, and a lease you signed. Stage 1. Intake. What's already in the building. Past the exam rooms, there's a machine the size of a microwave. It reads blood, and it decides more of your bill than your vet does. Your practice didn't really buy it. Machines like it get placed. The company puts one on your counter, and you agree to keep buying what it eats. Slides, cartridges, reagents. Every single test burns one. One company sold nearly $1.5 billion of those consumables last year. The same company books $3.4 billion in recurring diagnostics revenue. Recurring is the word doing the work in that sentence. The instrument is the cheap part. The blades are the business. Blades, not razors. If that shape feels familiar, it's because it's a printer. The machine is the bait. The ink is the business. 4/5 of that company's pet care revenue arrives the same way every quarter. Good year, bad year, doesn't matter. You didn't buy a machine, you bought a subscription. And here's the turn that sets up the rest of this. A subscription only pays for itself if the machine keeps running. Every quiet week counts, which means a quiet week costs you twice. That's the whole clinic in one sentence, and we're 90 seconds in. Now let's find out what the door costs. Stage 2. Vitals. What it costs just to stay open. Opening a general practice runs somewhere between $350,000 and $900,000 before a single animal comes through it. The fit-out alone can eat most of that. Equipment for a standard build is another $85,000 to $125,000. Specialty gear goes past $250,000 on its own. And the person you need most walks in already owing $212,000. 40% of them owe more than $200,000. 6% owe more than $400,000. For every dollar a new graduate earns in a year, they owe about $1.40. That's who you need. So you have to pay them properly. That isn't charity, it's the only way anyone stays. Payroll now takes 41.5% of everything the clinic brings in. It was 40.8 the year before. That's the whole margin story in 1 decimal point. 1 decimal point. The best-run hospitals hold it near 37.5. The gap between you and them is worth about $110,000 a year. That's 1 salary, or it's your profit. Rent, insurance, sharps disposal, software you don't get to choose. Every staff hour in that building has to bring in $114 before anything is left over. None of it moves when the waiting room is empty. That's what fixed actually means, and it's why a slow February hurts all year. And yet, one veterinarian still turns over about $990,000 a year. That's a real business. Money genuinely comes in. So the question isn't whether the clinic makes money. Real money, real animals. The question is where it goes on the way out. Stage 3. Diagnosis. Where the money actually comes from. For about 40 years, the answer was the shelf behind the desk. Flea treatment, heartworm pills, the special food. You prescribed it, and you sold it. Same box, your price. It was quiet money, and it paid the rent. Then the client pulled out a phone in your exam room and found the identical box cheaper. The company that sold it to them did $12.6 billion last year. Over $3 billion of that is pet health. It runs the largest pet pharmacy in the country, and it never had to hire a veterinarian to do it. 2 days, free shipping. You still do the exam, you still write the prescription, the box arrives at their door 2 days later. You did the work, somebody else took the margin. And I want to be fair here, nobody broke a rule. And while that was happening, corporate ownership went from about 8% of American clinics to roughly half. So you're an owner with a hole in your revenue. You get two options, and only one of them is quick. So you try. You match the online price and the things people actually check, and you eat the difference. It didn't work. That doesn't win the shelf back. It just makes the shelf cheaper. So you try again. Wellness plans, a monthly fee that bundles the vaccines and the checkups and keeps somebody coming back. One group alone runs about 2,500 of them. It started out making chocolate. Good idea. It also caps what you can charge them all year. So you try a third time, and this one works. Dentistry. Real medicine, badly underdone in this country, and it bills properly. And a dental needs blood work first. Pre-anesthetic panel, every time, because putting an animal under without one is bad practice. And there it is. The machine in the back room just got busier. So you lean in. Ultrasound. In-house panels instead of sending them out. Faster answers for the animal, and a bigger line on the invoice. Faster answers. Bigger invoice. Across the whole country, diagnostics was the fastest growing thing on the bill last year, up 4.6%. Faster than the visits, faster than the medicine, faster than everything you were told was the business. So the clinic did survive the pharmacy leaving. It just replaced it with the one revenue line somebody else already owned. And that company had a very good year. Its installed base of machines grew 12%, which is 12% more counters with a contract on them. You didn't get beaten by a competitor. You got quietly replumbed. Same clinic, new plumbing. Which brings us to the part where all of this shows up on somebody else's kitchen table. Stage 4, treatment and what the treatment costs. Payroll went up, the consumables went up, so you did the only thing a small business can do. You raised the price. The average charge per visit rose 7.5% in 1 year. Vet prices ran at 5.9%, while everything else in the shops ran at 2.4%. More than double the rest of the economy. And every one of those points has a reason we've already been through, none of which helps the person holding the invoice. Because here's what a person does when the number gets uncomfortable. They don't complain. They stretch the gap between visits. Visits fell 3.5%, then 1.4%, then 2.6%, then 3.1%. 4 years, all downhill. And the fastest fall was the wellness visit, down 3.8%. The cheap appointment, the one that catches things early. The cheap one goes first. Skip the $20 problem. Meet the $2,000 one. That's the trap, and it closes on both of you at once. They pay more later. You see them less often. Your veterinarian saw fewer cases last year than the year before. Not because they got slower, because the appointments weren't there. Meanwhile, the machine still wants its monthly minimum. So the price goes up again next year. That isn't a villain deciding something. That's arithmetic with nowhere left to go. Remember the $1,000 we opened on? A serious workup, imaging, and a night on fluids goes straight through it. And that is the number most people quietly stop at. And they stop. Stage 5, Prognosis. Gallup asked pet owners across America a very direct question last year. And the answer is the reason this episode exists. 52% have put off treatment or turned it down because of what it cost. That isn't a fringe, that's more than half the people who walk through your door. Half your waiting room. And 94% of veterinarians say a client's money now limits what they're even able to suggest. Read that one twice. It isn't about what the medicine can do, it's about what the vet decided not to say out loud. An option you're never offered isn't a choice you made. So the survey asked one more thing, and this is where the whole story turns over. If somebody offered you a payment plan, no interest, 12 months, how much could you afford for treatment that saves the animal? 64% said they could pay about double. Double. The 1,000 becomes 2,000, and the conversation at that counter becomes a completely different conversation. Same people, different answer. So how many were ever offered one? 23%. 64 could. 23 were asked. The machine, the payroll, the shelf that emptied, all of it ends at one desk, where the money was there the whole time, and nobody asked for it in a shape anyone could pay. And some conversations at that counter only happen once. Stage 6, Discharge. If this was worth your 10 minutes, hit like. It's free, and it's the only thing that decides whether the next one gets made. So why does anybody still open one of these? Because a veterinarian is the only person in this whole chain who chose the animal first. That's the whole reason. They took on $1.40 of debt for every dollar they'd earn, to do a job where the arithmetic argues with them daily. Nobody does that on the numbers. And the fix isn't complicated, which is the genuinely annoying part. 64% of that gap closes with a question at the desk. So here's the whole thing, on one page. If this is the kind of arithmetic you like, I ran the same numbers on a gas station. And on a coffee shop, both are on the channel. Marked up, real numbers, and where they actually land. $1,000. Or $2 if somebody asks.